The reason you keep second guessing yourself isn't because you lack intuition. It's because you're mistaking anxiety for guidance. And if you don't understand the difference, you'll keep chasing loud thoughts and ignoring the steady voice that was right all along. See, most people never learn how to separate these two signals. But by the end of this episode, you'll know exactly how to tell the difference. Not as a concept, but inside your own body. You'll be able to feel whether what's rising in you is fear trying to protect you or true spiritual guidance trying to align you. Not theory, not wishful thinking, but a lived, repeatable skill. Now, to see this clearly, there are three distinctions you need to notice. 1, why anxiety feels so persuasive. 2, what intuition actually feels like when it's clean. And 3, how to train discernment so you stop second-guessing yourself. Now, if you've ever laid in bed replaying the same choice and wondering if you've ignored spirit or if you were just scared, then you already felt how persuasive anxiety can be. And persuasion is not the same thing as guidance. So let's look at why anxiety actually feels like guidance. Because anxiety is not actually proof that you're broken, unspiritual, blocked, or somehow not tuned in. It's just a protective system. It's your nervous system trying to reduce uncertainty by predicting danger. See, back when we were all living in caves, when we were out hunting, it actually warned us that the noise we heard out there in the bush might actually be a saber-toothed tiger waiting just to grab us for lunch. So anxiety is actually useful, but only if we understand when to follow it. So the issue is not that anxiety appears. The issue is that anxiety can be so loud that you accidentally treat it like guidance. Because anxiety sometimes enters like a siren, right? And what makes it tricky is that it can actually feel spiritual simply because it's so intense. Many people have been taught that a strong feeling equals a meaningful message. But your nervous system can generate strong feelings for one reason. It wants you to be safe. And safety, in nervous system terms, often means predictable. So when life becomes unpredictable, maybe when you're waiting on an answer or when you're in a relationship that feels uncertain, or maybe you're considering a change of some kind, anxiety rises like a hand, shooting into the air saying, ooh, 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 pick me, listen to me, I've got the answer for you. But if you want a simple test, listen for the word forever, because anxiety loves that word. It'll say, you'll regret this forever, or you'll be stuck forever, or maybe this will ruin everything forever. But intuition almost never speaks in forever language. Guidance is specific. Anxiety is absolute. Anxiety also tends to kind of speak in circles. You can have the same internal conversation 10 times and still call it processing. But the body knows the difference between processing and spiraling. Processing has movement and then settling. But spiraling has movement and then more movement. It's kind of like that spiraling beach ball that you see on your computer sometimes when it's just frozen. No landing, no exhale, no finish. But here's why that matters. A looping mind is going to interpret its own looping as evidence. Like, if I'm still thinking about this, it's got to be important, right? That's like saying if the smoke alarm keeps going off, the building has to be on fire, without even checking whether the alarm is just oversensitive. Your mind's alarm can be sensitive, and that sensitivity is not necessarily a spiritual failure. It's a nervous system asking for steadiness. So when anxiety arrives, don't shame it, don't fight it, just name it. This is anxiety trying to protect me. Naming breaks the spell, and once you name it, you can stop treating it like a spiritual directive. It grabs you by the collar with speed and repetition. It doesn't tap you on the shoulder. It actually hijacks the room. It says, decide now. Fix it now. Don't wait. Don't risk it. Don't get it wrong. Because it's demanding. It feels important, right? So here's the first micro truth that changes everything. Intensity is not the same thing as clarity. Intensity is activation. Clarity is direction. Anxiety creates activation in the body. Your chest tightens, your stomach flips, your jaw clenches, your breath gets shallow, your thoughts sprint, and the mind does something very human. It tries to justify the feeling. It says, well, if my body's reacting, there's got to be a reason. Well, sometimes there is, but often the reason is simply uncertainty. See, anxiety loves chains. It loves dominoes. It loves a story that starts with one small decision and ends with your whole life falling apart. Well, if you do X and Y is going to happen, then Z is going to happen, and then I'll be stuck forever. Anxiety turns possibilities into certainties. It turns maybe into, oh, definitely. It turns a risk into a prophecy. And prophecy feels spiritual, right? But that's part of the confusion. Anxiety also borrows credibility from your values. If you're conscientious, anxiety is going to sound responsible. It'll dress itself up as wisdom. It'll say, well, let's be careful. It'll say, let's not be naive here. Maybe it'll say, let's not make a mistake. And because you're thoughtful, you respect caution. You respect due diligence. But anxiety piggybacks on that virtue. Another signature of anxiety is urgency. Anxiety wants closure more than it wants truth. Uncertainty feels unsafe for the nervous system, so anxiety tries to end uncertainty with some kind of action, any action, even the wrong action. Anxiety would rather you choose a door quickly than stand in the hallway with the discomfort of, gee, I don't know yet. This is where anxiety kind of mimics guidance. Guidance can move you, guidance can nudge you, but guidance never pressures you. Guidance doesn't threaten you with catastrophe if you don't act by tonight. Guidance doesn't say, if you don't decide by 5 p.m., your life is ruined. But guess what? Anxiety does. Anxiety also argues, it litigates, it presents exhibits, it makes a case, it turns into a lawyer. It pulls in the past and drags it into the present. Remember last time you trusted someone and you got hurt? Remember last time you took a risk and it didn't work out? Don't do that again. Anxiety doesn't just speak, it persuades. And because anxiety argues, it creates the illusion of thinking it through. You can spend hours in your head and call it analysis, when it's actually rehearsal for regret. And the mind just keeps looping and looping and looping because it wants certainty. But certainty doesn't come from looping, does it? It comes from steadiness. And here's another trap. Anxiety offers relief that kind of feels like clarity. Maybe you think, well, if I choose this option, I'll finally feel better. And you might, for a few hours, for a few days, just because you reduce the uncertainty. Then the body begins to relax, the mind quiets, and you say, see, that was the right decision. But relief is not guidance. Relief calms the nervous system, but guidance aligns your path. If you've ever chosen something just to stop that internal pressure, you know what often comes next. The doubt returns because you solved the feeling, not the alignment. You quieted the alarm, but you didn't necessarily follow the compass. Anxiety also kind of shrinks your perspective. It zooms you in until you lose a wider view. It makes one decision feel like the only decision. It makes one conversation feel life-defining. It frames everything as irreversible because irreversibility creates urgency in your mind. So if anxiety is loud, urgent, persuasive, relief-seeking, and future-obsessed, what does real intuition actually feel like? And this is where people often get surprised because intuition is rarely dramatic. It's actually steady. And steady is easy to miss if you've trained yourself to respond to spikes. So what does intuition actually feel like? Because intuition doesn't usually arrive like a thunderclap. A lot of people expect intuition to feel certainty with fireworks, but real guidance is often much quieter than your expectation. See, sometimes it's so quiet that you doubt it precisely because it's not dramatic. It doesn't come with a racing heart, doesn't come with a surge of adrenaline. It comes more like a very gentle internal, yes or no that doesn't need your permission to be true, because guidance does not come to try to impress you. One reason intuition is quiet is that it doesn't live in emergency mode. It doesn't need to mobilize your body. It doesn't need any adrenaline like when you were out avoiding the saber-toothed tiger. It's not trying to protect you from the future. It's trying to align you with the present. And that's why you can feel intuition most clearly when you're calm, or maybe when you're walking, or when you're doing something ordinary, like maybe washing the dishes. The mind quiets, the body settles, and the steady signal becomes noticeable. You might have experienced this. Maybe you've been wrestling with a decision for hours and you stop trying, go take a shower, and suddenly, poof, oh, I got the answer. I know it. That knowing didn't appear out of nowhere. It was always there, but it was under the noise. But the noise has finally dropped away. Another practical difference is the emotional aftertaste. Anxiety leaves you kind of depleted. Even if you chose something, you feel like you ran a marathon in your head. You're like, oh. Intuition leaves you feeling steadier. You may feel nervous, but you don't feel mentally shredded. There's an internal coherence that finally remains after that thought passes. And if you're somebody who doubts yourself, you might notice this pattern. Anxiety makes you want to check with 10 people, read 20 articles, ask spirit for 8 more signs. But intuition makes you feel like you can take one small step without needing the whole staircase. Because that next step, that's quality, and that's important. Intuition rarely gives you the entire map. It gives you the next right move. But if you demand the entire map, anxiety is going to happily fill in all the blanks with all the worst case scenarios. But intuition is comfortable with just unfolding. Anxiety's not. See, people say they want guidance, but what they often want is certainty that feels undeniable, like a neon sign, like a booming voice from the sky, like something they just cannot even question. But real intuition is often just simple, short, clean, unimpressive, quiet. It might be, wait. It might be, not this. It might be, go. It might be, call them. No courtroom, no argument, no 1,000-word justification, no pontification. Just a sentence that lands and then leaves you with quiet. Intuition doesn't even compete with anxiety. It doesn't try to overpower fear by becoming louder. It doesn't shout, hey, listen to me. It simply remains available. And if you miss it, doesn't punish you, doesn't guilt you, doesn't escalate. It just waits. And that waiting quality is one of the clearest fingerprints of real guidance. Because anxiety chases you, but intuition waits for you. Now let's talk about the body again, because the body actually is a tail on the voice. Anxiety tends to contract you. It feels like bracing, like tightening, like shrinking down. It can feel sharp, jagged, wired. Intuition tends to ground you, not necessarily make you feel comfortable, but ground you. Even if you feel nervous, there's a steadiness underneath the nerves. There's a sense of internal coherence. That matters because a lot of people assume, well, if I feel fear, it can't be intuition. But that's not true. You can feel fear about the unknown and still be guided. The presence of nerves doesn't mean the absence of alignment. The question is, what's underneath the fear? Is there a calm current beneath the waves? Or is the whole ocean just storming? And here's another distinction. Anxiety loops, but intuition repeats calmly. Anxiety repeats with increasing intensity. It kind of gets louder. It gets scarier. It adds new evidence. It tries new tactics to finally get your attention. But intuition repeats quietly. It returns unchanged. And if you ignore it today, it might come back tomorrow the same way. Calm, clear, simple. But anxiety often speaks in what if, whereas intuition speaks in this is. Anxiety predicts, intuition perceives. Prediction is story, perception is knowing. And here's an important nuance. Intuition doesn't always make you feel instantly better. Sometimes intuition points you towards a brave choice that makes your stomach kind of flutter. But the signal itself is always steady. It's not frantic. It's not pressuring. It's not shaming you. It's just simply there, again, under the noise. And one way to tell is just to listen for manipulation. Because anxiety manipulates with fear. If you don't do this, you're going to regret it. If you don't do that, you're going to be all alone. If you wait, you're going to miss your chance. But intuition doesn't manipulate. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't bargain with you. And another thing that anxiety loves to protect is your image, your identity, how you're seen. Anxiety says something like, hey, if you do this, people are going to judge you. Or if you change your mind, you're going to look inconsistent. Maybe if you charge more, you'll look greedy. Anxiety is often trying to protect you from shame, whereas intuition speaks to alignment, not self-image. It's the difference between living to be approved of and living just to be true. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but what if I'm wrong? What if I misread the signal? That's a fair question. But here's the warm truth. You don't really need perfection. You just need calibration. Discernment's not about never making a mistake. It's about learning your internal language so you can tell the difference more often than not. And the way that you do that is just by training it deliberately with a few simple practices that keep you out of that spiral, that beach ball. So let's look at how you can actually train your discernment, because discernment is trained the way any skill is trained: repetition, feedback, and refinement. Think of it kind of like tuning a radio. If you've ever tried to tune a station when you're slightly off frequency, you still hear the station, but it's kind of mixed with static. Anxiety is a static, but intuition is a station. Most people don't need a stronger station, they just need less static. And that's what discernment teaches. It teaches you how to tune. Also, you've got to be gentle with yourself here, because discernment's not a one-time epiphany. You're not going to suddenly get it. It's a relationship that you build with your own inner world. And relationships are built through repetition, right? You learn the difference by noticing it again and again in small moments, not just in like a huge life decision. So let me give you an example. Notice how anxiety feels when you're about to send a text that you're nervous about. But notice how intuition feels when you suddenly know the exact kind of words to say. The small moments train you for the big moments. One more tool before we move into the practices. You can ask, is this voice kind? Because guidance can be firm, it can be direct, but it's never cruel. Anxiety often becomes harsh. It shames you. It says, oh, you're behind, you're failing, you're foolish. It's the ego mind. But spirit doesn't speak to you that way. The tone of love is another filter. You don't train discernment by forcing answers. You train it by reducing interference and observing patterns. So let's start with perhaps the simplest move that changes everything. Remove artificial urgency. So if a thought feels like it's got to be acted on immediately, just pause and say to yourself, or out loud even, if you can, if this is true guidance, it'll still be true tomorrow. Because anxiety hates that sentence. Guidance loves it. Doesn't matter. Because when you slow down, anxiety often either escalates or just dissolves altogether. Intuition remains. And that's why sleep on it is such underrated wisdom. Sleep resets the nervous system. It reduces activation. It clears static. And often what remains in the morning is a steady signal you couldn't hear at night. Secondly, listen for the tone, not the content. Anxiety can say something factually correct in a very anxious tone. But intuition can say something challenging in just a very moderate, steady tone. So instead of debating the argument, ask, how is this being said inside me? How does it feel? Is it rushed? Is it pressuring? Is it catastrophizing? Is it shaming me? These are all ego mind attributes. Or is it calm? Is it simple? Is it grounded? Here's a third way to look at it. Use your body as an instrument. Close your eyes and imagine option A. Then imagine option B. Don't analyze it, just notice how it feels. Does your breath shorten? Does your jaw tighten? Do you feel bracing? Do you feel contraction? Or do you feel a subtle exhale, a settling, maybe a groundedness, calm, even if you're just still a little bit nervous about the outcome? Because your body often registers alignment actually before your mind even gives you the permission. So here's a fourth way to look at it. Externalize the loop. Write it down. Anxiety is a master of swirling. Journaling turns swirling into sentences. And once it's on the page, the pattern becomes obvious. So here's a simple method. Write down 2 columns. On the left side, say fear story. On the right side, say steady knowing. Then this brain dump, the fear, just let it out. Let it be honest. Then ask, if I strip away the story, what's the simple knowing underneath? Often it's just a single line. And here's a 5th way to do it. Run the return test. If you receive a nudge, don't act immediately. Give it space. Take a walk. Go outside. Do something ordinary. Maybe wash the dishes. And then ask again, what's still true? If guidance returns calmly, unchanged, and steady, that matters. If the thought morphs into bigger fears and bigger arguments, you're likely dealing with anxiety. Because guidance returns the same thing all the time. Fear returns bigger. Here's a 6th way. Build a decision log for yourself. And this is where discernment becomes practical instead of mystical. Just create a simple note with 4 lines. The decision, what I felt, what I chose, what the outcome is. So you're not judging yourself. You're collecting data. Over time, you'll start recognizing the patterns. You'll learn how anxiety starts to show up in you. You'll learn how intuition shows up in you. And you'll start to develop trust, not because you became perfect, but because you're starting to become more familiar and see the patterns. Now, I want to name something gently. You're still going to have anxiety sometimes. That doesn't mean that you're disconnected from spirit. Not at all. You're always connected. But it does not mean that you are blocked. Doesn't mean that you lack intuition. Just means that, guess what? You're a human. That's okay. The goal is not to eliminate anxiety altogether. The goal is just to stop mistaking anxiety for guidance. When you stop equating volume with truth, decisions become less dramatic. You stop redeciding decisions over and over again. You stop arguing with yourself. You stop needing 10 signs just to move forward. And you start listening for the quiet steadiness underneath. And here's the quiet miracle. Once you start trusting that steadiness, the noise often lowers on its own, not because you forced it, but because you stop feeding it with frantic attention. Now, I'm really curious to know which part of this whole episode resonated with you the most. Are you a person who struggles more with silencing anxiety or trusting your own intuition? Let me know in the comments whether it's anxiety that you trust or intuition that you trust. Really love to hear from you, and I read all the comments. Now, if you want a practical way to lower the internal noise so guidance feels easier to hear, I created a free guided meditation called Feel Calm and Connected in Just 10 Minutes. The link to that's in the description below. It's also in the show notes, and you can also download it at montclairmedium.com/free-meditation. And when you're done here, you can connect with the next episode. It's called Mistaking Anxiety for Intuition. Here's why. And that's going to help you catch the difference between guidance and anxiety. It'll help you experience greater anxiety relief and build trust in your own intuition. I hope this helped you. Love and light. This is Chris. Bye for now.